From Homedale to Salmon River, District 3 has several teams that don't always get their due. Stepping outside the shadows of the SIC, this is the Treasure Valley Prepcast with Logan Green.
That's right. It is another edition of the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down everything going on in the 3A, 2A, and 1A ranks in District 3 in the state of Idaho. Brandon Baney, as always, joined by Logan Green. So we took a week off. People probably were wondering where the heck was the podcast last week.
That's right.
We decided because it was Thanksgiving, because it was the official end of the fall sports season, it was kind of a natural stopping point. So we took a week off. But we're back, and we'll be with you all through the winter sports calendar as well. It's still an exciting time, right, Logan?
Yeah, it's, we're lining up for basketball. We've got some great basketball that we're going to talk about with some girls and just kind of get into that. I love basketball season. People ask me, what's your favorite sport? And during football season, it's football. During basketball season, it's basketball. I can never, make up my mind which one's actually my favorite. So give us about 2 weeks and it'll be back to being basketball season being my favorite.
Yeah, well, between you and me and the listeners, I guess I like basketball a lot better than football. I mean, I like football, but basketball is by far my favorite. So,
yeah, basketball is it's good. It's good. It's fun. I'm ready to be inside instead of outside. That's always nice, right?
Well, I don't know. The weather hasn't been too bad lately, and this podcast is already going off the rails as we're talking about the weather. Real scintillating stuff. Hey, I did want to ask real quick, how was your Thanksgiving, Logan?
It was good. We made the Blitz trip to Idaho Falls. I don't even think we were there for 24 hours. I think we got there around 5 on Wednesday and left around 5 on Thursday. So I'm in Middleton. So, what is that? 3.5 hours, 4 hours. It's about 4 hours. So yeah. That was ours. Where'd you guys do, Brandon? You guys went to Montana, right?
Yeah, we went to Montana and hung out there for a couple of days and came back on Monday. And we're actually going right back up to Montana again this weekend for a family thing. So putting the miles on the vehicle, that's for sure.
There you go.
I guess that's how they did it back in the day. As I talk to relatives in my family that are older, oh yeah, we'd get in the car and drive 8 hours and sit down for dinner and then drive home. I'm like, that sounds awful. It sounds terrible, but
yeah, I mean, just doing it, just staying one night it's a lot of time in the car. I can't imagine going down and then coming right back. That would be brutal.
Yeah. Well, before we dive into the official, not the official, but our official start to the winter sports season on IdahoSports.com, let's revisit real quick that 3A state football championship game from 2 weeks ago. We've kind of had time to process what happened. And for Weiser, the Wolverines, their first state championship since 1997, they win in double overtime over the 3-time defending state champs from Sugar Salem. You and I were both at the game, Logan, and my goodness, it was by far the best championship of the weekend. Oh, yeah, no, hands down. It was a fantastic game. And going into it, this was the one I was most excited for out of all the state championships. You could just see it brewing with Sugar Salem upsetting Homedale. And then, Homedale beat Weiser, and it was brewing to be the best game of the weekend. And my goodness, it was phenomenal. It was great to be there for that one. It was, tons of fans there at Holt Arena. It was a great environment, and, congratulations to Weiser for pulling off winning that state championship in double overtime. It's tough. You think about how they got there. It's just phenomenal. That game, Sugar Salem goes down late. Weiser up 6. Sugar scores a touchdown. And then Weiser blocked the extra point, but they threw a flag or a timeout. I can't remember. I think it was a timeout. So they had to replay it, and they blocked it again. So they blocked the kick twice in a row to keep it tied. And that was, I think people forget about that part of the game, was that extra point is made. The game is essentially over unless Weiser goes down the field on a long drive to win it. But they had to make a stop there, and they did. And then they also made the stop at the biggest moment of the game on the 2-point conversion in double overtime. what a scene that was. That was video that you shot for the IdahoSports.com social media accounts, Logan. You were right there in the end zone for that final play.
I know I was in the right place at the right time for that one. Just it happened to occur right in front of me, and it was a great shot, and you can see it clear as day right there. I don't know if there's a better angle of it anywhere out there. There might be, but of Brett Spencer just bolting over. I mean, he wasn't near that receiver at all, that back. And he came out of that linebacker position, saw it developing. You can see him run before the pass is thrown. He sees it, and he read it like a book, and he stopped it. I mean, 2 feet, just that much separates you from winning the state championship and going home a loser. And he did it right there. He put his team on his back. What a huge play that was for Brett Spencer.
Yeah, and I guess I should clarify that for those that are watching this Prepcast on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page, you just saw the game-winning tackle in double overtime by Weiser's Brett Spencer. If you're listening to this podcast on IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts, it's going to be a little tougher to follow along with. So I definitely recommend, if you don't check out the video version of the Prepcast, at least go to the IdahoSports.com Instagram account or Twitter account and find that play to watch, because it really was incredible. In fact, Logan, if it's all right with you, I want to play it again so people who haven't seen it can track Brett Spencer through the entire play, because the first time you see it, you're not really sure.
It just happens. Yeah, watch in the middle of the screen, kind of towards the right. Don't watch the sugar defender on the left. Look for Brett Spencer, number 2. Just watch and follow him.
I mean, the closing speed from Brett Spencer to make that tackle, just incredible.
Yeah, and that's a long way to go. And like I said, you can see him kind of waiting, and then he books it before the quarterback throws it. He knows where it's going. He follows him. He sees the outlet pass. And, man, yeah, he got over there fast. I'd be 5 yards away if that was me trying to chase him down. But, man, he turned on the jets and makes a huge stop when it matters. You think Brett Spencer, you think, oh, he's gonna do it with his legs. He's gonna do it with his arm. I mean, he did it, but probably the biggest play of the night he comes up with right there on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, a couple of things that I think got lost in the shuffle of that championship game. First of all, you mentioned the blocked PAT that Weiser had at the very end of regulation or towards the end of regulation. What happened was Weiser was trying to time the snap, because they knew they needed to basically block the point after kick to keep them inside. So that first penalty was an offsides penalty against.
That's what it was. I couldn't remember exactly what it was. It was offsides.
And that's okay, because you're moving it from the 2 to the 1. It's not hurting you. And
might as well.
Right. And so they timed the jump again a second time and blocked it. The second thing that people forget is that Weiser actually got the ball back with enough time, and Brett Spencer actually led the Wolverines into field goal range, and the field goal attempt was missed at the end of regulation by Weiser, which sent the game to overtime. And then the third thing that people forget is that on Weiser's possession in the second overtime, they had a basically from like the 14-yard line, right? You start at the 10 in overtime. You're not supposed to work backwards, and yet they found themselves around the 14, 15-yard line, and Brett Spencer just fired a dart to his brother Brock Spencer to get Weiser's touchdown, which then led to that defensive play.
Yeah, and it's crazy too, because I think it was the first overtime, right, where there was 4th down and long, and they threw it and it was incomplete, and there was a penalty, so they got another shot at it on 4th down, and then they scored. So man, it was that was the best game I think I've seen all season. That was phenomenal. I mean, that Meridian Rigby game I did a couple weeks ago was awesome, but this might have topped it. Those were both fantastic games. So, I mean, congratulations to Weiser. And then, Brett Spencer, he didn't just stop there, but he actually won the player of the game in the Shrine Bowl this weekend that Paul and I did at Milton. That was a grinded out game that his team, I believe the West, they were up 13-0. They lost the lead 14-13, and Brett Spencer leads a drive. This is a 3A, quote 3A quarterback going in playing with 4 and 5A, offensive line, defenders, all of this. And he goes right in there and leads his team down the field, scores the game-winning touchdown to tie it up. And then they go for, they're 1 point behind. They go for 2 to win it. And he throws a dart to Quentin Riley from Meridian to win the game. So, he didn't stop there. He went and just won the player of the game in the Shrine Bowl as well.
Yeah, well, no surprise. He was our IdahoSports.com player of the game in that 3A championship win as well. He had 3 touchdowns through the air, 2 touchdowns on the ground. He had 2 interceptions on defense, and then that game-winning tackle. I think people kind of forgot that, Brett Spencer was an all-state defensive back last year in his junior season. And then due to some really good performances at some passing camps on the summer circuit, that's when his stock as a quarterback really took off. And then all of a sudden people thought of him as this, oh yeah, he's a big quarterback, and Idaho, offered him a scholarship. And I think people kind of forgot that he's still really good as a defensive back as well. Yeah.
I mean, he could play. He showed right there that he could play there and do it well. I think he had that. Was it an interception on the first drive of the game for Sugar Salem? Yes. That he comes away with the interception after he scored after he threw a touchdown, and just a phenomenal athlete. And I'm sure everybody else though in the 3A SRV will be glad to see him go. They won't miss him. Goodbye. See you later. It stinks to lose an athlete like that, but everybody else has got to saying, whew, we don't have to deal with that problem anymore.
Well, I mean, you get rid of one Spencer and you got another one still for 2 more years.
Yeah.
Brock Spencer, only a sophomore this past year. So, and one last note on Weiser, Tom Harrison, legendary coach, does it again. Career state title number 11 in the legendary career for Coach Tom Harrison.
Yeah, phenomenal. Just dominating the scene, just jumping around, and no matter where he goes, he wins. So, it was bound to happen for the Wolverines at some point. And it happened this year.
Yeah, 11th title now at 4 different schools: Raft River, Snake River, Pocatello, and now Weiser. Speaking of Weiser, let's transition to the basketball court and girls basketball. That wasn't a great transition because Weiser is only 1-2 in girls hoops, but
yeah,
we talked about this a couple weeks ago, Logan. I really don't like how girls basketball starts while football is still wrapping up, because I feel like girls basketball, which should have the spotlight to themselves, kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit.
Yeah, it does a little bit. And like you said, I mean, Weiser, they started off the season with a win over Nampa Christian. I mean, that was back on November 13th. Like, they've been playing for 2.5 weeks of basketball, and it's like, oh, that was that long ago that they've been playing. And it just kind of gets lost in the shuffle as to what's going on with girls hoops. But yeah, we're in the full swing of things. But on the contrary to Weiser losing those 2 games, or, they've lost 2 games. They both came to Melba, who is all of a sudden looking just as scary as they did last year.
Yeah, let's start with Melba. We kind of touched on it 2 weeks ago. If you look at the 2A Western Idaho Conference standings right now, it is Melba at 4-0, Ambrose is 4-0, and Coal Valley Christian is 3-0. This looks like it's going to be a good league.
Yeah, and you look at the coaches poll coming in, and Ambrose last year was 3-17. That's not good. So there's no way to make to put lipstick on that pig. That's not a great record. And now they come out on fire this season. And so now all of a sudden there's somebody else adding into the mix. Of course, Melba and Coal Valley Christian tied for first in that poll. And now all of a sudden here's Ambrose saying, wait, don't forget about us in here. And it's a pretty hot start for the 2A WIC so far this season.
Well, and we'll find out pretty quick what Ambrose is about, because that 4-0 start came with wins over 1A teams, right? They beat Riverstone, Greenleaf, Wilder, and Notice. Whereas Melba and Coal Valley are playing up, right? They're playing 3A schools. For Ambrose, I know, talking to the athletic director at the Ambrose school, Kelly Barber, he actually was the girls basketball coach for the past couple of seasons, and he's also the AD. He was very happy to tell me that after a couple of years off, Jordan Tucker, who was previously the girls coach, he's now back in his second stint leading the Archers. And I think it's been a good move having Jordan Tucker back there as the head coach for the Ambrose girls program.
Yeah, I mean, clearly paying dividends already. I know you said that they were all 1A schools, but they're wins, right?
Right.
Some of those 1A schools are just as good. I think back a couple of years ago, that Lakeside team from up north, I think they could have beaten 2 and 3A schools if they played them. They were really good. And so, same thing, Garden Valley boys last year. I'd like to see them play in the 3A conference. I'm sure they'd win some games. So it's good to get wins under your belt. No matter how they come, they will be helpful down the line, giving your team a little confidence, saying, we can do this. We can win these games. And so it's a good start for Ambrose already, even though those are 1A schools, a little confidence under the belt there for the Archers.
Definitely. And as we go through the winter months here on the Prepcast, we're gonna try and keep things as relevant as we can. But with basketball, there's so many games on so many different nights that you'll just want to keep checking back on the standings page at IdahoSports.com, because what we're talking about now might be different by tomorrow. For example, Ambrose is playing New Plymouth in their first conference game Monday night or Tuesday night, the 30th. So by the time you're listening to this, that game will already be final, and maybe Ambrose will be 4-1. Maybe they'll be 5-0. So I would say just keep checking back at IdahoSports.com. Just make it your homepage, honestly, and check every day. We'll have all the scores, all the standings. We're starting to roll out. We've got all the girls basketball previews up. We're starting to roll out our boys basketball previews. So there's a lot going on at the site.
Yeah. Like you said, you just got to keep checking back and seeing what's out there. We'll have all the scores as soon as we know them, and try to get to some of these basketball games as well to see if we can bring them to you. I know in a couple weeks we'll be there at Mountain View when there's the 1A showcase, where a couple of Treasure Valley teams will be playing in that tournament. So all those games will be live and free on IdahoSports.com. So if you want to watch some great 1A basketball from teams here in the Treasure Valley, you want to check that out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that 2A WIC is going to be a lot of fun to watch this year with Melba, Cole Valley, Ambrose, Nampa Christian, and New Plymouth too. Coach Denise Oliver is one of the better coaches around. And so New Plymouth is going to be right there in the mix as well. I think this league is going to be a lot of fun and very competitive each night.
Yeah, New Plymouth, they went to state last year. They were playing on Saturday. So that they did well, that they were in competition. They won a game at state. They've got 2 key players back. Ebony Shaw and Jane Gibson are back for the Pilgrims. So, watch out for them. They could make some noise. I think it's very top heavy. There's a lot of really good teams in that 2A WIC. We can hit on it all day, but of course Melba, coming back to do it all over again. Of course, winning the state championship last year. Their sights are set high, and they're going to have a huge target on their back.
Yeah, they did lose Kate Clark, who was such a phenomenal player, but Kendall Clark is back. They've got a lot of good players. Give us a couple of players that you're keeping an eye on this year throughout the conference.
Yeah, so, like you said, Kendall Clark, Kylie Wilson or Weiser, Haley Arnold from Melba. Those are just a few of the names there. You look at Cole Valley Christian, Lindsay Crow, Julie Caven. There's a lot of names. Riley Traxler, just some of the names there from Cole Valley as well. And then you look down the list, you've got Olivia Irwin from Nampa Christian who can get in there. Then I mentioned Ebony Shaw and Jane Gibson from New Plymouth. So I think that there's a lot of great athletes there in that 2A WIC or WIC, tongue-tied here, this season that are going to come out and play very well this year. And that's all you can ask for, right, is having this strong competition. And you can go down the list too. Marsing with their great team. Last year they were only 1-9 in conference. You expect to see a little bit of progress there. Same with Compass Charter and Vision. They've got good athletes coming back, and they should be in the mix to maybe move up a little bit and show everybody that they're much improved from last season.
Yeah. So you mentioned Vision Charter at the end there. They're doing kind of a hybrid JV varsity schedule this year. They will be moving down to the 1A D1 ranks next year. Mm-hmm. And because of that, they thought it would be best to play the JV teams in the WIC. They're not going to be a varsity member of the conference, but talking to their coach, Nick Marmon, he said that we were able to schedule some varsity games against some of the 1A D1 schools that we will be in a league with next year. And that's going to give us a good barometer and a good test as we prepare for this transition. So,
and that 1A D1 conference, that is, it's no joke. I mean, you look at the returning champ, Liberty Charter, you've got Rimrock, and you've got Notice in there. Those are the top three in the coaches poll, the preseason poll. Rimrock and Liberty Charter have just been kind of rocks for the last couple years. It'll be interesting to see how Liberty Charter does without Madison Hodnett. She's gone. She was phenomenal the past couple years at Liberty Charter. I think at one point she was averaging a triple-double. She just and she can do it all. And I did one of her games a couple years ago in the state first round state tournament, and she almost had a triple-double in the first round of the state tournament as a junior. And that's going to be a tough piece to replace for the Patriots. And I think that'll be a key story for them, is how well can they come back from that.
Yes, and Rimrock, of course, was such a great team last year. They're off to a 3-1 start so far this season. The lone setback was a tight one to Richfield, which was a 1A D2 state qualifier last year. Richfield, man, because I did the 1A D2 girls state tournament last year. Richfield is a team that they are the best defensive team I've seen around, and it's evidenced by the final score, 35-23. That's exactly what Richfield wants to do. Otherwise, Rimrock has put up 49, 43, and 40. So this is a Rimrock offense that looks pretty good.
Yeah, and Rimrock, they like to shoot the ball. They've done it well over the past couple years, and I expect them to come out and continue to shoot the ball well. And if they can do that, then they're going to win a lot of games. Like I said, 21-3 last year for the Raiders. Had a great run at state as well. Maybe this is their year without the problem of Madison Hodnett down low for Liberty Charter, that somebody else can get a rebound in a game, and maybe they can overtake the Patriots this season.
Yeah, one final note on the 1A D1 girls basketball scene in District 3. Centennial Baptist did not have enough players for their own team this year, so they kind of joined forces with Gem State. So it's Centennial Baptist along with Gem State co-oping for that program this year. I believe on the boys' side, they have enough for their own team, Centennial Baptist and Gem State. But one note there, if people are looking and don't see Centennial Baptist, that's why they're playing with Gem State this season. So,
yeah, I hadn't heard that one. I knew that their numbers, sometimes they fluctuate. Sometimes they can field a team. Sometimes they can't. But so watch out, Gem State. See what they can do with the couple more athletes there.
Definitely. Well, let's talk about the 1A D2. Let's talk about the Long Pin Conference, because, I mean, this is crazy how good District 3 was in girls basketball last year, right? You talk about Melba winning the 2A, Liberty Charter winning the 1A D1, and then you had Tri-Valley win the 1A D2 girls state title a year ago. We saw in volleyball, right? They won the volleyball title last year as well. It's tough to defend that crown. Horseshoe Bend ultimately not only upended Tri-Valley in the conference, but also won the state title. And we could see something similar in basketball. Tri-Valley lost a lot of talented players.
They did. I mean, yeah, you look at Emma Holland is gone. She was like one of the key pieces to that team. And without her, I think they lost 4 seniors. It's going to be tough. I mean, they're going to be good. There's no way they can't be. They got Coach Jeff Springer back, of course. They're bringing back some, Abigail Atnip. She's a returning senior on that team. You've got Marin Hansen as well, that she's back. So those are people that have played in the state championship. They know what's going on. I know they lost a ton of seniors, but because of that, now is Council's time. I think this is Council's to win. They were so young last year, and they've got tons of players back. I did a game up in Garden Valley last year where Council played Garden Valley, and you could just tell that the talent was there. They just needed more time. They were super young. I look at Hope Zalman. She's going to be difficult for other teams to deal with down low and getting offensive rebounds. And I mean, she's a sophomore this year, was only a freshman last year. And because of that, they got Rihanna Iveson. She's a sophomore. And then Michaela Hart is also a sophomore. So they've got 3 key players that are all sophomores. There, and then you throw into the mix your new coach, Paula Tucker. Watch out for the Lumberjacks, or I guess the Lady Jacks, or I don't know what you call a lady lumberjack, but whatever. They're going to be tough this year.
Yes. We talked about in volleyball, Tri-Valley being down a little bit. That opened the door for a young Horseshoe Bend team, right? They had a lot of sophomores on their volleyball team. Same thing with Council. I think it's set up where Council could have a couple of years of success. Paula Tucker, we've talked about, one of the best basketball coaches, boys or girls, in that area. And the interesting part is she was previously the head coach at Salmon River. She's now moved over to Council. Her son, Levi Tucker, was the boys coach at Salmon River, while Paula was the girls coach. Well, Paula left and Levi switched over to the girls side. So when Council and Salmon River meet up this year, that'll be mother against son, Paula Tucker against Levi Tucker.
That'll be fun. We'd like to see that. That'll be fantastic. And, you look around the conference as well. I mean, we talked about, Tri-Valley losing Emma Holland as well as Josie Jones. That's going to be tough for them. But for Garden Valley, you look at them and they have Katie Wentz back, and they're kind of just quietly sitting there. I like Garden Valley. They just always seem to exceed expectations, and watch out for them to be competitive. I really think, like we said, it's probably Council's to win, but they've got to earn it. They haven't done it. It's not. I think it's wide open, honestly. But I think I lean towards Council to win it. But I think that there are going to be some teams in the mix that you maybe didn't see before, and I think you might even get a surprise team, very possibly sneak their way into state this year.
Yeah, Council 3-0, Garden Valley 3-0, Tri-Valley 2-0, Horseshoe Bend yet to play. Well, they've played, but we haven't gotten their scores in yet, so ignore that. We'll get that updated.
We're trying.
Yes, we with the holidays and football, a couple of scores slipped through the cracks. So, regardless, this is going to be a fun conference as well to watch throughout the season. I completely agree. I talked about Katie Wentz at Garden Valley during volleyball season, where she plays volleyball, basketball, does a spring sport as well, and it feels like she's been there for 10 years.
I know. Yeah, it's it's funny. So during we'll talk about boys basketball later, but during that Shrine game, the first one, the 8-man Shrine game, during that, Carson, what am I? I'm all over the place, Brandon. Hudson Fields, right? So Corbin Fields was at Garden Valley. Obviously, it seems like the Fields they've been there forever. And he was a senior playing in that game. And I'm like, he's a senior? He was always the little brother to Hudson Fields or Corbin. I mean, he is the little brother, but I was just like, wow, he's a senior. I can't believe that I thought he was way younger. Anyways, there's always just those athletes at Garden Valley. Like you said, you look at their 3 wins. They beat Wilder by 15. They beat Greenleaf by almost 20, and they beat Victory Charter by 30. So, look out for the Wolverines to make some noise too. Like I said, I think it's open. I think if anybody wants it, they can earn it, the conference championship this year.
Well, it's easy to forget that Garden Valley really was a good team last year, and probably should have gone to state. They lost to Richfield, that Richfield team that I was talking about earlier in the state play-in game, where Richfield basically came out and slowed the game down and said, we're going to make it ugly. And Garden Valley had, just enough shots not fall to sit at home at state. And so Tri-Valley was the only team from the district that even went to state last year, which was kind of surprising. But so Garden Valley is going to be motivated. No doubt about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's wrap up with the Snake River Valley Conference, the 3A ranks. Fruitland off to a 3-1 start. Otherwise, everybody else below 500.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at, the surprising one to me is Parma. Like Parma, preseason favorite to win it all. They're good every single year, but they come into it. They lost to Cole Valley Christian, who's really good. And I think that speaks probably more to Cole Valley than it does to Parma. And then, of course, they lost to Emmett. And that's playing up a 4A school. They defeated Emmett. So they go and they beat a 4A school. And then they lose a close one to Grangeville, who was a state qualifier last year as well at the 2A level. So they've had some tough games that they've had to play so far. But like you said, a little bit surprising, to be honest, to see them sitting at that point already, and then you add in that loss to Melba to open up the season as well.
Well, two of those three losses, Parma's 1-3. Two of their three losses came by one possession, right? They lost to Melba 38-35, and then they lost to Grangeville 46-44. So they're close. I think Parma, they're just fine.
I think they'll turn it around. They just always reload with who they've got over there to play basketball in Parma. I don't know what factory they're pumping them out of, but they always find somebody that can shoot the three as well.
They've got a couple of interesting games coming up. They'll take a road trip over to East Idaho. They're going to be at Sugar Salem Friday, December 3rd, and then they will be at West Jefferson on Saturday, December 4th. That's a really good 3A program and a really solid 2A program from the East. It'll be a good measuring stick for Parma in the early going.
Yeah, and they're going to need somebody to step up to replace Grace Jackson. I did one game where I don't think the basket must have been 10 feet wide for her. She was just dropping threes all over the place, making everything possible. And so now's the time somebody needs to step up and replace her, as she was the rock to that team last year. First team all Idaho point guard in Grace Jackson. And that's going to be a key place for the Panthers to replace this season. And somebody's going to step up and do it. But, it's remained to be seen who will do that this year.
Yeah. Fruitland 3-1, as we mentioned. Two of their three wins have come against 4A schools, right? Valley View 49-18, Nampa 61-31. Now they did lose to Columbia, but Columbia made it to state last year as a 4A team. No shame. Right. And then a tight win over New Plymouth, which is, as we talked about, a good 2A program. Fruitland also heading east this weekend. Are they on the same schedule as Parma, where they're playing West Jefferson Friday, Sugar Saturday? No, they're like, we're doing our own thing. We're going to play South Fremont Friday, December 3rd, and then Firth on Saturday, December 4th. That will also be an interesting challenge for the Grizzlies. Yeah,
I always like to see these cross-state games. Last year, South Fremont came over and played at Parma. I don't know if they played anybody else around, but that was a great game. We actually did that one on Idaho Sports. That was a really fun game. But yeah, like you said, Fruitland off to a really good start with those wins. I mean, they didn't just beat Nampa. Like they took them out back behind the woodshed, beat them by 30 points, really put the hammer down. And like you said, losing to Columbia, but Columbia is a really good 4A team. Went to state last year. Nothing to really hang your head on there. They'll recover from this, and they're going to be really good. They've got Abby Rubidoux back there. Of course, she tore it up on the soccer field this year. If she scores as many points in a basketball game as she does in a soccer game, they'll be fine. And usually that's not true, because if you score one goal a game in soccer, but not when you're her and you score like 7 goals a game or something like that. But, she's going to be somebody to deal with for the Grizzlies as well this season. Yeah.
Well, two of the leaders that helped Fruitland win that girls soccer title, right? Abby Rubidoux and Peyton Fritz, right? So they're obviously bringing that scoring prowess from the soccer field indoors to the basketball court.
Right.
Fruitland was only picked 4th in the preseason coaches poll, yet they sit in 1st right now. It was Parma, then McCall Donnelly, and then Weiser. So we'll see how everything shakes out as the season goes along. McCall Donnelly 1 and 2. I mean, they're in a tie for second place. And that's the thing early on. You can't take too much stock of the standings until they start playing conference games, which in some leagues will start this week. But for these 3A schools, they might have a conference game or two, but a lot of it's going to come after the new year.
Yeah, and McCall Donnelly is one of those teams that I'm curious to see how they do this year. They only played 12 games last year. Really didn't play a ton of basketball. Went 6-6. We don't know if that was were they really a 500 team, or are they better than a 500 team? We don't know. They just didn't play a lot of basketball. And so this year, way more normal. And so we should see more of the Vandals and see what they're all about.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch girls basketball really ramp up here in the month of December. This is really the big month where teams start to separate themselves a little bit. So next week on the Prepcast, we'll kind of break down what's going on in boys basketball. There's a smattering of games to open the season this week, but we can really dive into what's going on with boys basketball next week on the Treasure Valley Prepcast. And again, we're going to be here each and every week breaking down boys basketball, girls basketball, and wrestling for all of those smaller schools in the Treasure Valley. 4 different ways you can get this podcast each week. Audio only at IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts. Video version as well on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook page. Logan, it's been a pleasure as always.
Yep, it always is, Brandon.
All right. Well, for Logan Green, I'm Brandon Baney. It's good to be back after a week off. Thanks for listening or watching to the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.